headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
As one of the first MPs to criticise COVID restrictions openly, what did you make of Boris Johnson's announcement?
I'm really pleased. We seem to be going in the right direction of travel, but it's always about the details. Is it really fully moving away from the COVID restrictions of all forms and also the potential of further restrictions, or is it kind of certain questions over how it's going to pan out in the future? For example, in terms of compulsory vaccinations, we're being told on the one hand that the government's no longer going to legislate for compulsory vaccinations in the NHS and withdraw the position in terms of care homes. But they're also writing to the professional bodies, and there's a question whether or not they're going to compel people through those mechanisms as opposed to legislation. So I want to see what the details are.
I asked this not as for you to talk about Boris Johnson. I'm talking about this really in terms of COVID. A lot of people are saying, is this about political manoeuvrability? Is this about currying favour with very angry backbenchers and shoring up his own position? And you're right, there isn't so much detail. A lot of people, Chris, are saying overnight, well, suddenly this was announced. There was no scientist. There was no one of those big announcements. It came out at Prime Minister's Question Time. You and others, I guess, who agree with you, welcome it, but cautiously. And you, I guess you're wondering whether it'll happen or it's a distraction from other issues, right?
There are always concerns about the details and motivations of things. But one of the aspects about this, talking to constituents, my mailbag, there are very few people, and certainly no one who's been in touch with me, who's actually opposing this. I think the country as a whole wants to move in this direction. The Prime Minister's moving in the right direction as far as I am concerned. And I think one of my concerns right from the beginning is about the data, about the information that's being shared with people, and we need an informed decision, not just from the politicians and the scientists, but from society, because people are very good at weighing up the pros and cons of any particular policy and how it impacts upon their lives, and the perceived risks of COVID and the challenges that restrictions have in terms of wider healthcare, the economy, children's education, and civil liberties. So I actually think this is in the spirit of what the country wants. I think
you make a point, and I think the problem is, and we had a scientist on earlier who was saying, no, it's too soon, it's going to come again, and I was saying, look, surely, the world has to move on. Is there not a point where we've all been told all these things for years, well, for 2 years, and the scientists have lined up and we've been hit with figures and all this sort of stuff? What say that the government or politicians say to people? Listen, you're adults, you understand. People have to make decisions and be responsible for their own actions. I think there's been so many different messages that people perhaps have got confused. But I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I would have thought that the majority of people in this country, Chris, absolutely want to get on with their lives. And if you choose to be cautious, then do it. But I can never see a situation where the British public will ever accept a lockdown again. Can you?
No, I think we've shifted very significantly from where we were. I think the points you're making are exactly right. We are far better informed of how we can manage the situation. And a couple of years ago, the idea, if we had have seen someone walking around with a face mask, many people, probably including me, would have laughed or chortled about
Absolutely.
it. It's so unusual. But now, if someone's got a cold or the flu or anything else, wearing a face mask would be a sensible precaution for them to protect other people. We're far better positioned to understand it. And I think in terms of the projections, the modelling, what the scientists are saying, well, the health secretary was saying there'll be 1 million transmissions per day on New Year's Day. They were saying there might be up to 5,000 deaths per day at its peak with the Omicron variant, that this could be the worst variant yet. And so I think the scientists need to take a little bit of a step back because when they make these projections and the reality is so profoundly different, it does undermine their credibility to some degree.
Chris, very quickly, a couple of things. England is scrapping all restrictions from the 24th of February, although somebody disagrees. Let me just read this very quickly. I just heard JK say on Talk Breakfast, on the 23rd of February, we get our freedoms back. Wrong. We're not free until the Coronavirus Act is repealed, the state of emergency ended, government by diktat is over, and parliamentary democracy is restored. Your response to that quickly, Chris?
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Perhaps not all the details, but I'll go along with that. The Coronavirus Act was destined to be for 2 years. If that can be withdrawn, if that can be brought to an end earlier, that would be the most powerful way for the government to say we return to normal.
So England's returning to normal, but Scotland's extended theirs for 6 months. What do you feel about that?
Well, it's extraordinary in Scotland, and I think many people in Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom are looking at the local leaders and thinking, you're deliberately doing different rules, having a different approach because you want to make a political statement. And Scotland looks set to keep their Scottish ID card, their own coronavirus pass. So they're deliberately setting up something that could in the future be used as an ID card and actually create that separation between Scotland and England.
Well, this is interesting. Jules in Coventry says, what will Miss Nicola Sturgeon do with all these COVID powers dwindling that she's thrived on over the past 2 years? Oh, silly question. She'll blame COVID on Westminster and return to her rubbishing of the UK and return to her independence obsession. That might be true. Chris, really appreciate it. You would absolutely expect me to ask you the next question. Where do you stand on Boris Johnson? Is he doing enough, or have you sent a letter in?
Well, I think the Prime Minister's taken us in the right direction. The economy's bouncing back. He's setting the right agenda over COVID, which is the biggest question we've had since the Second World War. So I'm feeling far better now. And
what about, you talked about your in-tray. For weeks we heard that in-trays were bulging with emails from constituents concerned about Partygate. I don't for any second disrespect what happened. I think it was appalling. But people have moved on. They are interested, are they not, in the cost of living in Ukraine, about COVID, about things that matter to their everyday lives. Did you agree with that?
I think the cost of living is by far the most important single issue for people. It's going to be very tough months ahead. And, I think that's taken up so much of people's attention now.
Fantastic. Chris, I think you should have more confidence and go on screen next time, but very grateful that you came on Talk Breakfast. Appreciate it very much. Chris Green, Tory MP and member of the COVID Recovery Group, reacting to the news that on the 23rd of February, Boris Johnson says we're going to get on with our lives.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.